it was reminding me of one Dharma friend of mine who's done a lot of meditation and, and things for years. And then he met one woman and they fell in love and got married, and he was saying to me, we have such a strong connection. We're really like soulmates from previous lives, with this very strong karmic connection. And I knew we were we were close in a previous life, and we're close in this life, and we're really meant for each other. And I said, you don't sound like you're talking like a Buddhist anymore. You sound like you're talking like, somebody who believes in a soul and an Atman and a permanent person. I said, that's not the Buddhist perspective. Yeah? And so that becomes, at the time of death, then you really see, when we talk about the jigta, the view of personal identity, or Jeffrey translates it as view of the perishing aggregates, and then extreme view, thinking that either the person ceases totally or is a permanent, eternal entity going on. You see those very clearly arise in people's minds at the time of death. Not only the person who's dying, who has a lot of jikta and grasping at themselves as, this real thing that doesn't want to disintegrate, but also the loved ones around them, seeing them as a very concrete person. And when you think about it, like the aggregate, we say Bill Wilmot was merely labeled in dependence upon those aggregates. Okay? Well, those aggregates have now dispersed. I don't know if he's been cremated yet. Maybe his body's still in the hospital. Maybe, she arranged for the cremation today, but the body, the form aggregate, is not the same. And the mental aggregates, those were human aggregates, the human aggregates of consciousness, of feeling, of discrimination, of feeling, and volitional factors. Yeah? So those human aggregates cease when the human body ceases, when the human life ceases. Yeah? There's a continuity of clarity and knowing that goes on to the next life. But that continuity, there's nothing personal about it. There's nothing, that is some personal entity of Billness in that clarity and knowing, and that mere I that is merely labeled in dependence upon that clarity and knowing, and all that karma and the habit, the habitual energy that is just kind of traveling along, that's being carried by the mere I. There's nothing personal in any of that. Yeah. And so to think of, Bill Wilmot is now in the bardo. Actually, Bill Wilmot ceased. That's the I of this life. The general I that's merely labeled, continues. But the I of this life has ceased. Yeah? And so there's new aggregates in the bardo that are tending towards, whoever he's going to be reborn as. And so to remember that, and if there's no, inherently existent person that is there in the bardo, then there's also, or in the next life, then there's also no inherently existent person that dies. Because it's not like, and then there's also no inherently existent person that's alive. Because it's not like, well, we're all inherently existent, and then we get to the time of death, and then, well, yeah, there's a merely labeled I after that. No, I mean, the I is merely labeled the whole thing. It's our misconception mind that grasps onto it as being some real solid person there, when all it is something that's merely labeled in dependence upon the collection of the aggregates, which are changing moment by moment by moment by moment, never remaining the same, and which themselves are unfindable when you search with analytic wisdom. Yeah? So very, important to remember this, not only while we're alive, but also when people die, because death is a perfect time to contemplate emptiness. It's not that there's no continuity. There's a continuity, but it's not the same person. And that same person was never alive either, because if you look at Bill Wilmot, I'm sure if we had baby pictures, and teenage pictures, and, the aggregates are changing constantly during that one life. So thus the person who's merely labeled independence on them is changing all the time too. Yeah? So it really helps us to reflect on emptiness and get a better understanding. And when we do that, it helps us release this kind of clinging and grief and longing and stuff like that. Okay.
The reincarnation stories, they testing and they say that it is irritating. And the reincarnation stories of Kayama, for example, and then like you told the story about the Serenas that he was not previous teacher or Nala, and all these seems to be something like permanent in it or something like that.
Well, do you recognize the same people from day to day?
No.
Do you recognize the same people from day to day? Yes, you do. Okay, so somebody with clarity of mind might be able to recognize the same people from life to life, because there's some kind of imprint there on the mind. But being able to recognize the same people does not mean that there's a permanent soul. Ordinary people look at that and grasp it, but that doesn't make it exist that way. It's our misconception. Okay? And that's what this whole thing of emptiness is getting at. It's our misconception that takes things that appear similar from day to day and reifies them to make them permanent, and then adds on top of that some inherently existent entity. Okay? So just because things appear that way, just because worldly people see them that way, does not mean they exist that way. And even Dharma people, you'll see when, the reincarnation of a teacher, and people look at that reincarnation as if they were the same person as that teacher. Yeah? And that's our problem. Yeah? I remember one time it was really hilarious. What was the situation? It was, I was talking to Lama Zopa something about Serkun Rinpoche, who's both of our teachers and had passed away in the 80s and is now in his late 20s. And I was saying something about Serkun Rinpoche, and this was occurring in the context when both Lama Zopa and I were attending Geshe Zopa's teachings, when Geshe Zopa is teaching Lama Tsongkhapa's, he was teaching Lama Tsongkhapa's, one of his texts on emptiness. And so I was saying something about Serkun Rinpoche, and Lama Zopa says, well, he's just the same, or we were talking about something about the relationship with the Guru, and he said, well, it's the same person as last life. And I looked at Rinpoche, and then we both just cracked up, Yeah, because I think he was saying that to kind of, make the feeling closer, but, I was going, no, that's not what Geshe Zopa would agree with. Okay? Yeah. And so you'll see, when they identify the incarnates, people get so excited. I remember when I first saw some of my teachers, in their next slide. Oh, did he recognize you? Did he recognize you? Well, I wasn't paying attention to that. Who cares if he recognizes me? If he recognizes me, that's not what's important. It is for my ego. Oh, I'm special. He remembered me. I'm special. Is that a virtuous state of mind? No. Is that the purpose of my guru, to invoke that state of mind in me? No. He wants to invoke the opposite state of mind in me. Something that isn't focused on me being special and on him being, some inherently existent something. Yeah. So, it doesn't matter, recognize me, not recognize me. That's not important. The important thing is the Dharma connection and being able to, hear teachings and understand the teachings and put them into practice. The rest is kind of fluff. But we're very attached to the fluff. We like the fluff. Pink fluff, green fluff, blue fluff. And it all says me on it. Okay. Okay? Okay, then the second thing was some comments just to conclude the course. First thing is, to remind you, as I said before, that the purpose of the course is not for people to decide if they're going to become monastics or not. We're not expecting you to come up with an answer. It's called exploring monastic life, which means you explore that possibility, but more important, you explore the Dharma, and you're learning the Dharma. Okay? And so, as I've been saying, when you really get into the Dharma and you see how true it is, how it's a good description of what's going on with you, and when you practice it and you see that it works, then your faith increases, and then that kind of naturally leads you to want to keep, to really get your ethical scene in action. I call to really do something about your ethical conduct. I call that stop being a jerk. First step in the practice, stop being a jerk. Because when you look at it, killing, stealing, unwise and unkind sexual behavior, lying and taking intoxicants makes us into a jerk. We do all sorts of stupid things that get ourselves into jams and make other people's lives miserable. So if you are practicing the Dharma and see the Buddha's psychological description is true, and you start working with your mind, then it becomes really obvious, I have to stop being a jerk. Yeah? Because as long as I'm a jerk, saying, I want these high exotic practices, but don't tell me to stop sleeping around. When you get to that point, you see, there's something wrong with my viewpoint, I want to do these high exotic practices that take me to La La Land, but I don't want to start doing the simplest thing that every human being, whether they're religious or not, values. Like being honest and being truthful and stuff like that, So, okay, maybe I better, kind of get my act together and build a good foundation for practice. So you start valuing ethical conduct, and you start working with your emotions and your mind, and then slowly you build on that, and all the high practices you'll get to when your mind is ready for them. Yeah. So that's very much how I see this. So if during the program, you learn some Dharma, that's very good. If you learn something about yourself, that's even better. Well, maybe not even better. It's just as good. You have to learn about the Dharma, and you have to learn about yourself, and then you have to put the two things together. So during the course, during the discussions, our discussions are designed to raise up issues, and get us to look at things that we haven't looked at before, or that we haven't talked about with other people before, or where we're don't feel so comfortable to be totally open about what's going on with us. It's designed to make those things come up, because it's only by seeing that stuff that we can work with it. And all of that stuff has to be worked out for not only if you're going to be a monastic, but if you're going to be a happy human being. And so, in the course of the discussions, in the course of following the schedule, and doing the practices here, you're going to learn stuff about yourself. Yeah. So, maybe you learn from doing the practices here, oh, gee, I have a whole lot of restless energy. I can't sit still in the cushion. Yeah. Or, when I can sit still, I'm asleep. And, gee, I go between squirming and sleeping with that much time in between the two. Well, maybe I have a couple minutes of meditation, but usually I'm squirming and usually I'm sleeping. Sound familiar? Anybody here have that problem? Yeah? So if you learn that about yourself, that's good. Yeah? And then you start, asking, well, what are the antidotes to restless energy? Yeah, what are the antidotes? How do I work with my restless energy? What are the antidotes to sleeping? How do I work with my tendency to become drowsy in meditation? And then that's our challenge, and that's our practice, to work with these things that come up. Because whether you become a monastic or you don't become a monastic, if you want to meditate, you're going to have to overcome those obstacles. Yeah? And whether you meditate here, whether you meditate somewhere else, you have to deal with those obstacles. Yeah? So ignoring the obstacles, leaving, kind of saying, oh, forget it, that is not the antidote to those obstacles, You have to stay there and show up and work with it. And it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, isn't it? When your mind is restless and you can't, or your body's restless and you're just, you can't, well, maybe not that bad, but, you can't sit still, or your mind is just, you're watching sci-fi movies in your meditation, you're reading romantic novels in your meditation, you're, thinking about physics in your meditation. It's like, oh, I have a lot of distraction here, and I've got to deal with it sitting right here. Because if I don't deal with it, when am I going to deal with it? And it's not going to go away by itself. Yeah, it's not like, you get a cold and the cold eventually goes away. Our distractions are not going to go away. They're just going to get more varied. Yeah, so, you have to stay here, and it's like, okay. And it's uncomfortable. It's like, I just want to meditate and just have some peace and quiet, and there's this yap, 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 yap. And then the only time it's quiet is when I'm asleep. But I slept enough, I slept enough. And as soon as I walk outside the meditation hall, I'm fine, I'm awake, and I don't fall asleep during lunch and breakfast and dinner. How come I'm only asleep during meditation? Very good question. This is function of self-centered mind. Self-centered mind says, I don't like this meditation business. It's getting a little bit too close to home. They're finding out my secrets when they meditate, and I don't like that wisdom mind to find out how I control the show. So I'm going to pull a fast one. And self-centered mind makes us go to sleep. Yeah? So, it's like we got to look at this, and we have to work with it. Yeah, like, how do I stay awake? So you ask, well, what are the antidotes to sleepiness? What do I do? Yeah, and then you practice them. And once in a while they work, and sometimes at the beginning they don't work, or they work for 5 seconds and then they don't work anymore. But it's like learning to type. You got to keep practicing. You don't sit down at the typewriter and this, same thing with this, even if it's just, I'm using typewriter because I'm a dinosaur. Even if you're learning to type with your thumbs, you have to have some practice. It doesn't work all at once. And it doesn't work consistently. You got to practice. So it's the same with dealing with whatever obstacles we have in meditation. Okay? And everybody has the same obstacles. It's not, just you, although we feel like it's just me, They're all in samadhi. I'm the only one whose skin is crawling. I'm wanting to get out of here, Or they're all, we never think they're all in samadhi. I'm asleep because we're too sleepy to think that. But believe me, everybody in the room has had the experience of being this and then, oh, gee, how nice to still be in the meditation hall. I had a nice nap there. I was supposed to be meditating. And everybody's had the experience of sitting in meditation and getting furious at somebody. Yeah, you had that experience? You're meditating, and something comes up from the past. You are furious. Yeah, that person's not here. You're sitting in a calm, quiet, peaceful room with nice people. Your mind is like, ah! Everybody's had that one too. And then, oh. I thought I was in the middle of a big fight. Gee, that wasn't happening. That was all happening in my mind, And then you start to ask, oh, you mean all those times when I'm miserable? You start to recall all the times when you're angry, when you're miserable, when you're dissatisfied, and how the object that you're craving or the object you're hating is nowhere in sight. And all that emotion is happening, that whole scene is happening inside your mind. Yeah? So here I am so dissatisfied. I want this, I want this, I want this. What I want isn't even here. Or I'm daydreaming. I have it, I have it. It isn't even here. I hate it, I hate it. It isn't even here. And we begin to get some idea about how conceptuality works in our mind, how afflictions work in our mind. Yeah, how we dream up scenes and then react to what we've dreamed up. And then we start to be aware that we project stuff, that when we are with people, we project our stuff onto them and then have a relationship with what we've projected onto somebody else, confusing that person with our projection. Yeah. And you begin to get an idea of, oh boy, my afflictions, my mind is creating my reality. And sometimes what I'm creating is really skewed and really painful. And it's my projection. Yeah? Like all I have to do is hear the word rule. And I'm like this. Or all I have to do is hear the word should. And again, who's telling me what to do? Don't should on me. I'm my own independent person. Now use that word should, take that word rule out of the book, the dictionary. I hate it. I'm not doing it. Or somebody says, what's another? I mean, so many examples like this, isn't it? Somebody says the word attractive, and immediately we go, oh, I'm not attractive. I'm so ugly. I'm deformed. Something's wrong with me. I'm so unattractive. This is terrible. I hate the word attractive because I'm not it, and all these other people are so attractive around me. Like, what's wrong with me? We just sometimes hear a word and like, it's true, isn't it? Yeah? And you know, there's our mind just creating some reality on, you know, innocent people and things on the outside that have nothing to do, but we're just pouring our stuff onto them and then fighting with the external world as we created it. Instead of looking at people and saying, there are my kind mother sentient beings. Yeah. Instead of looking, you know, and the first thing, oh, there's a sentient being who's been kind to me in previous lives and who will be kind to me in future lives. There's a sentient being who is overwhelmed by their own afflictions, but all they really want is just to be happy and not suffer. You know, we realize, gee, I'm not looking at people like that, which is what they are, and they're all exactly alike. It doesn't matter what sex they are, how old they are, what socioeconomic class, what gender, what sexual orientation, what educational background, what race, what ethnicity. You know, they're all my kind mother sentient beings who want to just be happy and not suffer. That's true, but you know, but we don't look at sentient beings that way. You know, we look at the package and then judge the package. Oh, that one's too fat, therefore blah, 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 blah. That one's too thin, therefore blah, 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 blah. That one's a man, therefore blah, blah. That one's a woman, therefore blah, blah. That one's old, therefore blah, blah. That one's young, therefore blah, blah. And just project our conceptions on top of these people. And then, you know, wonder why we don't get along with them so well. Yeah, we're not giving them a chance. Yeah, we're not seeing them as kind mother sentient beings who want to be happy and don't want to suffer. It's like, there's somebody who's incarcerated. Ah, they must be a scary devil. You know, oh, there's somebody that's rich. They must be really wonderful. I wonder how I can meet them. You know, all this is just our junk. Yeah, that has nothing to do with reality. Yeah, so if you come out of this course with some awareness of this and how your mind is working, then very successful, you know. Then you start seeing, oh boy, I have some issues. It's not that something's wrong with the whole world, and the world has to change, and these people have to stop being this way. Yeah, but I have to change my mind if I want to be happy. Because until I change my mind, my judgmental, projecting, discriminating, rebellious mind is coming with me everywhere. You know? So sometimes you think, well, if I ran down the hill, you know, I'm only like this crazy when I'm up there. You know? I'm only projecting stuff when I'm up there, and I'm so restless and nutty. As soon as I get into Starbucks, I'll be okay. You know? Starbucks with my latte. Oh, now I feel normal again. Squirm, squirm, sleep, sleep. You know? So, you know, so wherever we are, we have to train this mind, you know, because all this comes with us, you know. So, you know, and the thing is, nobody else can train our mind for us. We can hire people to build the building. We can hire people to mow the lawn. We cannot hire people to train our own mind. In the same way that we can't hire people to eat for us so that we'll feel full. There's some things you really got to do yourself. Yeah? And training our own mind is one of them. Yeah? So, since training our mind creates the causes for happiness, why not do it? Okay, sometimes it's uncomfortable. We got to look at the beep, beep, beep in our mind. Excuse my, not French, not German, not Spanish, not Chinese. Excuse my English, see all the shit in our mind. and you know, and see, wow, you know, I've got to do something with this. And you know what? The Buddha really knew what he was talking about, because the Buddha was describing this whole scene. You know, he talked about ignorance, anger, and attachment. And he talked about how we're never satisfied. And he talked about how we judge people and project on people. And he talked about how we fall asleep and get restless and annoyed and everything in meditation. Gee, you know what? The Buddha understands me. Yeah, he understands. Maybe the Buddha knows what he's talking about, you know. This isn't some ordinary dude there, you know. This is somebody who really understands the way the mind works. Maybe, you know, maybe I better kind of listen a little bit more. Maybe I should try and put it in practice what he says. Maybe. But I'm not going to follow any authority at all. Well, maybe I have an authority issue too. Oh, no, I don't have that. Are you sure? You know? And so we start questioning ourselves. We start looking at ourselves. Yeah? What's going on in this crazy mind of ours? You know? And then we realize, wow, you know, the Buddha does understand, and there are remedies to apply, and all we have to do is learn them and put them into practice, being extremely patient while we're doing so, and being very kind to ourselves and kind to others while we're doing so. Not expecting ourselves to change overnight, not expecting other people to change immediately, but knowing that with time, with retraining, you know, then change occurs. You know, this deep kind of change. And so then we kind of get committed to the practice. And then as you work out some things, and then immediately your mind says, okay, got that finished out. You know, I have no more attachment. That's fine. You know, no more attachment to food. I'm completely okay. It's great. And then, you know, you think it's all that problem's all solved. You know, I'm not defensive anymore. People can give me any kind of feedback. I am not defensive anymore. I've conquered that one. Yeah, just wait. Forget attachment to food. Some other attachment that's even bigger is going to explode, you know. Let alone next time you see those shiitake mushrooms, you're going to salivate, even if you didn't like them before. You know, because what we crave changes from time to time. You know, oh, shiitake mushrooms. You know, and then like, oh, well, maybe I still am kind of defensive. You know, well, how can that be? I thought I got rid of all of that. Yeah. Oh, well, this is the value of, you know, we have to be patient. We have to be kind to ourselves. We have to know this is a long process, and we keep, you know, we work on something for a while and it gets better, but don't think it's all gone. It's going to come up again. And when it comes up again, you work on it again, and you apply the tools you learned before, but you go deeper with those same tools, training your mind. Okay, and you continue like that, just consistently developing as time goes on. So that's why it's called Dharma practice. It's not called instant Dharma. Okay, so I wasn't going to give a talk. That was just going to be the few closing comments. Any questions? Or?
Second day that I was here, I wanted to run away. I like this, like, oh no.
Yeah, that's very normal. Yeah, that's why that's why we chose a place where there's not a lot of traffic. Yeah, I'm joking. Yeah.
I had to work with that one.
Yeah. Ruby?
I was just going to say, you hear the advice, like, there's the antidote and just apply it, but all the stuff that gets in the way of even applying.
Yeah.
And it took so long for me to even see that my self-centered mind makes up all kinds of antidotes. That, the antidote to laziness is beat yourself up, and then you keep doing that, it's like, no, that's not what it is. But,
Yeah. Right.
the antidote to restlessness is get up and walk around.
Yeah.
And to the mind that just seems so clear at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the actual.
Or the antidote to depression is meditate on death. It's like, that's the wrong antidote.
Any antidotes go eat chocolate.
Yeah, right. The supreme antidote is eating chocolate. Yeah. Then go get more. Yeah. So, we're all in this boat together now, and we don't need to compare ourselves to anybody else. We're all in this boat together. Yeah. And so let's just, paddle around together, help each other, and the first one who gets to the mainland, help the rest of us.